Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, we go to episode 299 of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's swimming in the dark with me tonight?
This is Joe Butler, and did you know the Indians believe that cameras could steal your souls?
This is Richard Sampson from the YouTube channel Rich Kale and various fanfiction sites out there, and it seems like the upload worked, but I'm not sure.
Hi, this is Casey. I don't have anything to introduce. I just like games a lot.
And I'm Mike. It sure is dark down here.
And welcome, first time on Games My Mom Found. So you are here to join us with a game that I'm surprised I picked. But enough people have talked about it that I've been interested in it and been curious to play it. And we're here to talk about Soma, developed by Frictional Games, published by Frictional Games, and came out in 2015. Damn, older than I thought it was.
Already.
I can give you a little bit why, Mike. As playing this, it's a very good middle between like Firewatch. It's spookier than Firewatch, but not as bad as Outlast. Outlast, you would have an awful time with.
You notice how Outlast has not happened on the show, right?
And I don't blame you. Those games are fucking awful. Not bad, but like, ugh.
I played the first Outlast game. It's an experience. Don't ask me to play the DLC or the second one, though.
Don't worry,
I
I'm not gonna
played both.
have myself.
Halloween is next month. Guess what?
Both are pretty good.
I like walking sims. I like horror games to a degree, but I also been finding out more and more that I really, really like psychological horror.
That's fair.
So I did not know that about myself, but thanks to Ken, I am really learning that I am into psychological horror.
Yes, we were talking about that last night.
Yes, which doesn't happen for another month in this show, but yes. Soma is. So I didn't know anything about. So I had heard of Soma from people talking about it. It was on a list. I do watch a bunch of videos on YouTube, like, oh, you need to play these games, and I'll write them down, put how many hours they are, and go, okay, and just so that way they're just there. So when I do start picking games for the show, I'll scroll through the list and see stuff that people had recommended and what I put, and just see what grabs my attention. And I knew nothing about Soma. I don't think I even really knew it was a walking sim to a degree. I just knew that it was a creepy horror game. I thought it took place in space, and that was all I knew until about a week ago when I started playing.
Yeah.
And Joe, what about you?
I never played Soma. Whenever Soma came out, what year did you say it was?
2015.
2015, yeah. So I'd still be I wouldn't be a big PC gamer yet till like maybe 5 years ago. So 2015 would have been like hype YouTube for me, because I remember this game being one of the big like, are you a YouTuber? Oh, it's that time of the month. Break out scary games. Everyone's doing this one specific game. Not to say this game is bad, but I just know everyone and their mom was playing this when it came out because that's how good it was. So I already know how this game ends. And I always thought it was interesting because there's another game that could have done it. It didn't. I'll bring that up later. But I always, as usual, Mike, I appreciate you bringing me on Spooktober, because there's a lot of horror games I've never gotten around to beating or playing. And this is one of those that I've had on my list too, where I'm like, I need to play this at one point just to see because I've never seen the beginning either. I've only seen like halfway to the end.
Okay. I mean, I'm still surprised this game was not spoiled for me. By the way, I knew nothing going in. And as a guy who lives on YouTube and the internet, like, I don't know how that happened, but I'll take it. So, yeah, I didn't know anything about this game. Richard, what about you?
Well, like Joe, this was the first time I was playing it. I got it actually as a freebie. It was one of those free giveaways that GOG did, and I hadn't played it until now. I've seen stuff about it on YouTube and that, but even knowing the deal of the story, it didn't ruin it for me. It was an experience I really wanted to experience.
I'm glad. I'm glad I could change that for you.
Yeah.
And Casey.
So this was my second time playing the game. I got it back when it first came out. I know I finished it January 2nd, 2016, because that's what my save file said when I downloaded the game again. It's one of my favorite horror games, even if I haven't replayed it in a long time. I think the story is so interesting that I would like go back over stuff from it or watch Let's Plays and stuff since then to kind of see people's reactions to stuff in the game, specifically the ending. But no, this was my second time playing it, and it's still really, really interesting stuff going through it a second time.
Okay. And Michael.
So for me, this is my fourth time playing the game. I loved the game so much when I first got it on the PS4. I got it on release day, which, by the way, is the day of recording, 22nd September 2015.
That's cool.
Exactly 9 years. And I loved it so much that I ended up getting it on PC as well when I made the change over to computers. The game's storytelling really captivated me, and I've been a big fan of frictional games ever since the first Amnesia game, and I loved that game so much that I felt compelled to buy the entirety of the Penumbra series, and then I own all of the Amnesia games, even A Machine for Pigs and Rebirth. Actually, I don't own the Bunker, so I take that back. I don't own the Bunker yet.
I played Penumbra Overture for our first Spooktober on this podcast, and I fucking hated it. That's what the girl was for. So.
I'm needless to say, I am a huge fan of frictional games' work. Their original work and their collaborative work to me is some of the best in all of horror, and they stand right alongside Silent Hill as my favorite horror franchises, period.
All right, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, if I ever get which won't happen, the drive to do another Penumbra game, I know who to reach out to.
Wonderful.
I can't see it happening, but I do know who to reach out to now. I hate
yes, you'll be crawling out of Dr. Munchie's lair.
I hated that first game so much, and I'm like, never play another one of these. That was a long time ago. But
was Kenneth part of that one?
No, that was before he had joined the show. It was actually just the original cast, and Adam and Helena joined me, I'm pretty sure, for that.
I've also never played a single Amnesia game either, but honestly, I think it's because I'd shit my pants if I played them.
They look terrifying.
Yeah.
I've seen people play Amnesia. I've never played it myself. I don't think I could ever bring myself to. Soma was different because I think it's more of the setting.
Well, does Amnesia have an easy mode like this did?
Yeah, I think it does.
It does not. So there are mods that exist, I believe, to literally just make the monsters harmless. But the game itself is a story, but the monsters themselves are more, in my eyes, they're more important and integral to the experience than even Soma.
Okay.
At least Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Okay.
A Machine for Pigs is a different story.
I think if I remember too, I think when Soma came out, it didn't have that easy mode. I think they added the story mode later because people, I think, kind of felt that the monsters, like Mike was saying, that they're not super integral to the narrative, not in the way that they are with Amnesia. And so I think when a lot of people were reacting to how good the storytelling was and didn't want to do that stealth horror stuff that these games do, I think they added that later. I feel like I remember hearing about that.
It's nice. Oh, and I don't always say this because this is a 9-year-old game. There will be spoilers for the story. If you have somehow been like me and never been spoiled on this game, stop listening to us because we're going to spoil the hell out of this game. And go play this. You can play as a walking sim, put on safe mode, pull up a guide because the puzzles pissed me off. If you're like me,
yeah, lost twice.
I tried to play legit. I got stuck, and I'm like, well, brain not working. Let's just use the internet. So
I don't think I looked up a single walkthrough for this one.
Yeah, but you play puzzle games.
True.
Mm-hmm.
The puzzle games I play are read guide, do this. So, I did try. I did try for a while to do all the puzzles, and I got, which I'll talk about. I got to a certain point where I just said, fuck it. But I was trying to do them legit until I just got frustrated. But I did try for a while, and I was mostly trying to play this game blind, but I just got confused, and I wouldn't have understood a couple things to the end, but we will get there. So yeah, I just want to put spoilers. We are going to ruin the story. If you don't know what this game is about, and like, oh, hey, I like games my mom, I'll listen to it. Play the game if you're interested. If you're not, enjoy listening to us, but this is a game that it's a story-driven game that you want to, if you can experience the story firsthand without having to spoil to you, that's the way to do it.
Hell, if you don't even want to, play the game, you can just go to YouTube. There's at least a couple 3.5-hour video movies because I had to rewatch. I'd be I think 2 days after, I'd be 2 days after whenever you started, Mike, because I was like, oh, I'll play when Mike does. And I was like, oh, yeah, this game's surprisingly short. So
yeah, it's 7 hours or so. Shorter if you cheat.
Shorter if you cheat.
I mean,
I was enjoying working my way through it.
I I was too. There was a puzzle near the end where you had to grab memory tapes. That's the part that got me because I didn't realize that memory tapes were in a certain room. So I was running around the hall. I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have figured this out because I didn't even realize that these were buttons I could push. So I wouldn't have gotten through that. It was an episode where it was a part where you had to get memories of different crew members, put it on this tape to, I think you were trying to upload the guy into the computer to then get him to give you the passcode.
Yeah.
It was that puzzle. So for those that don't know, Soma can be a walking sim, but it's a first-person horror game where you are in an underwater base and the world is fucked up.
Yeah.
It's over.
Pretty much, yes. Not even pretty much, it is.
But it doesn't start that way, which is the beautiful part of it.
Yes.
I have a weird question since
Sure.
I'm pretty sure all of y'all have like the first memory of this. Did y'all understand he had like brain cancer or anything like that? Because after rolling through that opening, I was like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Like, I didn't know if it was like a dream sequence or if he was being weird. But like later on in the game, you find out that he has some kind of brain cancer, right? Am I getting that right?
Yes,
I think he mentions it in the beginning.
he does mention it in the beginning. And in fact, it's kind of also hinted at that there is something wrong with him, like before the story even truly begins, because of the opening cutscene where he is driving a vehicle with, I believe, his girlfriend.
They never
They never
explain it very
say,
well.
I think
Like
I know-
his head starts bleeding randomly out of nowhere.
Like coworker for sure. I paid more attention to that this time around, and there's a conversation he has with his boss where they're talking about hiring new people at a comic book shop, and he says like, "Oh, but that was so and so's position," and so definitely his coworker, but I thought girlfriend also. I
thought it was weird
Yeah.
that they chose him to be a comic shop employee. I just thought
Yeah.
that was weird.
To be relatable.
Well, that's not. I mean, the reason I found it weird is because like you wouldn't have that nice of an apartment if you probably work at a comic book store.
Oh,
That's neither here nor there.
It's Canada.
America.
Yeah, it's Canada, Mike. You can't be sure.
Oh, it is Canada, isn't it?
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Toronto.
Livable wage.
Yeah, because I was thinking like here, like you'd have roommates. Like you wouldn't be making enough money, especially when your hours get cut because stores not have enough business. Like and the guy's like, hey, you got to come in. Someone's got to cover the shift. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a retail store, but that makes sense, Canada.
It does.
In America, like, oh, hey, Johnny called in today, so you're working all night. Oh, I get overtime. No, we didn't say that.
You know, I've
Let's
Okay.
go a different day. But
Okay, I just looked it up on the wiki, the Soma wiki. They were in a car accident, he and his coworker. She died at the scene.
and he had like a brain injury, and that's why he goes in for that operation at the beginning of the game.
okay.
Yeah, and his life expectancy is measured in months.
Yeah, it's a very sad opening. It's a very sad game, period. Like,
Yeah, it's not this is a bummer of a game.
yeah,
They
it really is.
they went out of their way with this one to like kind of have it as like a bittersweet as well because of they figure all avenues have been exhausted. This is something experimental. Why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
I really like it. I thought this game was interesting all the time. I was never bored. Like, I mean, a lot of this game is walking around once you get into the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never boring to me. Like, I was watching some reviews and people were bitching about really, in my opinion, dumb shit. But we'll get there. But no, I mean, the opening is really cool. And it, like, where all you're doing is, like, one, you're just looking around your apartment to find a bottle to take. Like, it's a very subtle opening. You're on a train at one point just sitting there listening to people talk. Like, it's a very... saying it, subtle opening, and then all of a sudden he gets a scan, and then he wakes up. You sit in the chair, gets a scan. Next thing you see, you're in some weird space lab.
Yeah.
Not in space, but
And I will admit that for that first part, I was having a hard time finding the quote die. And I never even thought about open cabinet. Oh, there it is.
I didn't know. I mean, I don't know how. I think I walked by something and it gave me the option to click, and that's how I figured out. Okay, you can do stuff.
Yeah, when I first played this game, I remember being stuck on that for maybe 10 minutes. It was a little frustrating towards the end. But then I found it in the drawer.
It's always in the last place you look, the speedrunner told me.
Well, the thing is like what I should have remembered is that's what we used to do at home when I was growing up. The medications you needed to take, you put them in the cabinet. especially if you needed to take them with food. You put them in a cabinet in the kitchen.
It has like I think 3 different spots it can be, but you have to check the other 2 before it shows up in the third one.
I was gonna say I thought you were gonna say because like my family had a medicine cabinet, so it was always like yeah,
Oh,
it's
we
like
had that
oh.
too.
It's like, oh, what's we didn't keep in the bathroom though, but it's like, oh, check the medicine cabinet for what you need. It's like, okay, cool. But I grew up with my grandparents, so it's always like, cool, children's Tylenol, this expired 1 year ago. Regular Tylenol, this expired 3 years ago. Why do we have a bottle of Oxycontin that's from the 80s in here? I'm not taking that.
Because that drug is expensive, sir. That's why. It can be sold for good money.
Plus, if your grandparents lived through the Depression.
Probably. They're like 70 now.
You lived through the Depression, you never threw anything else out. Trust me, we know that.
Michael, what were you going to say?
Actually, I corrected myself. I realized that, yes, I was indeed correct when we were initially talking about finding the guy. That totally left my head. But yeah, finding the tracer fluid, that first puzzle actually is different every time. It's actually in a different spot. It's randomly generated.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't. All right, because the speedrunner said you have to check all 3 spots, but maybe that's just them. I tried watching a speedrun on Awesome Games Done Quick, but they glitch out of the wall, and I'm just like, this is stupid.
Yeah, sometimes I found it. I found it one time, I believe, in the fridge. Then I found it next to the fridge, in the medicine cabinet, and then I think next to his bed.
Huh.
It's
so there's at least 3-4 spots it could be. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good introduction puzzle. I mean, this game is essentially a walking sim puzzle game if you play on safe mode.
Yeah.
Which I recommend.
I don't think I did that.
No, and I just do it because if the option is there, I'm going to do it. It's just how I am with all games. If you give me an easy option, I'm going the easy route. Like I just
So.
Don't, Mike.
What?
What's up?
Don't ever play Descent.
I don't even know what Descent did. Oh, that was a game we talked about before, wasn't it?
That's the one I just recently got done doing on my channel. First person shooter that had true 360 feel on it.
I'm good.
Put it on the very easy mode. It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like that. But this game is also outside my normal type of gaming. I'm also not a big fan of puzzle games. I don't play a lot of them, especially not for this podcast.
We hope to fix that in the future.
I know. I will get Leighton on the show at some point. But because I do want to play more DS games. But I mean, that's the thing that surprised me is how much I was enjoying this game still. Like, the atmosphere of this game is amazing. You feel claustrophobic. You feel alone, isolated. You're scared. Like, even the fact that I knew I couldn't die, I was still paranoid and freaked out while playing this game on edge. Like, it did it. It did its job.
No, I would agree with that. Like, I think also, like, just the mystery and narrative and stuff is a real motivator. These kinds of first-person horror games used to give me really bad anxiety. Like, I couldn't play Alien Isolation for the longest time. But just the world and the pacing of things worked so well in this game that I didn't want to stop in this one. I didn't, like, even though I think it's a pretty scary game at points. The sound design and stuff is really good. Even, like, revisiting it, they're still like, oh man, this is intense. But I think it's really good at just pulling you through the game a lot better than I think some of the other ones are. There's not as many points where you're just kind of like stuck in a room trying to like sneak around a monster and figure out where to go. It always felt very, I don't know, you're pulled along by the narrative and everything else to keep wanting to proceed.
Yeah.
In particular, I can agree with the sound design. The sound design, I believe, let me just double check here. I believe it was done by Kamo Sound, who actually did Amnesia the Dark Descent as well.
Oh, cool.
Design for Soma. It was done actually by Sweet Justice. I take that back.
It's very good. The sound design really is creepy. I played this entire game with headphones on.
Yeah,
you have to.
The audio, the attention to the volume of the space you are in is on point. The fact that when you're in underwater tunnels, you can hear cables that are attached to units that are like chained to the seafloor, reaching max tension and creating kind of like that warping, like when you take a really big thin metal sheet and wiggle it, but
Yeah.
you hear that underwater for literal hundreds and hundreds of feet away.
That's
the fact that
cool.
there's a difference between a pencil, a screwdriver, and a drill being dropped.
I didn't mess with that much. I didn't pick up a lot of items and drop them or throw them like you can, because you can pick up lots of little things you see laying around the game and throw them for whatever reason.
And that is the magnificent part of the HPL engine. The HP Lovecraft engine powers this game.
Okay.
Nice.
So you're telling me the engine is racist?
And that's why they don't have cats in any of them.
Follow up with the sound design too. The game also uses that. I mentioned Alien Isolation a bit ago, but that kind of like you're using a lot of advanced computers, and there's lots of stuff to do with robots and stuff like that, very advanced stuff. But like the computers and the tech is just big and chunky, and there's a lot of good ticking, dialing, staticky noises on these computers, and all the individual bits of like the station and the way it all sounds together. It's really like immersive, and it makes all these things like kind of satisfying to use too. Like I liked using the just computer displays just because tapping through them and reading like emails and stuff like that. Like the audio design there is really good too.
Yeah.
I didn't read a lot of the messages. I would look at them thinking that I need to click each one at first in case it gave me like information that would like give them a password or give them something, because some games do that, but I didn't really pay attention to them.
Gives you lore, Mike.
And that's what YouTube was for after I beat the game. But yes, I just didn't want to read. I didn't even listen to a lot of the video stuff. I just listened to Catherine. I did listen to almost everything Catherine had to say.
Yeah, you always have to listen to her.
I didn't have a choice, but yes.
But you're gonna say the same thing I do, where it's like, I like when lady mean to me. Yes.
I do, unfortunately, too, but...
be mean to me, lady.
Hey, should I play Resident Evil 8 someday, huh?
Yes.
But no, I it is also nice that you really don't have anybody else but Catherine. I mean, Catherine's just a computer that you find at one point, which you end up figuring out it was a person that was then uploaded to a computer. And I think you might find out what she is before you find out or she's the one that tells you what you are. But you don't really know what you are.
Yeah, because it does help. I mean, Simon is completely lost when he, quote, comes out of the brain scan and finds himself in, where the hell am I?
It's terrifying. Can you imagine that? Like, all of a sudden, you're just sitting at the doctor's office, you close your eyes, open your eyes, and you're in some futuristic, you don't know where the fuck you are. Like, can you imagine that? Like, where everything is alien?
Oh, God, one day.
And there's nobody to talk to. There's nobody to explain anything. There's, like, you're just rumbling through notes and papers trying to understand what is going on, which it seems very logical. That's what any person would do. You start looking for information.
And then
of course, the weird ways that he can get information, like recalling discussions that were held over like a communicator just by waving his hand over it.
Yeah, he interfaces with that console.
Oh, by the way, if you click them and then walk away, they stop. If you're curious.
Yep. And they also make another wicked sound effect, a pretty darn weird, interesting sound that sounds equal parts organic and metallic.
Oh.
I did not realize every person had a transmitter in their head, and that's what you're reading or listening to when you did your little thing when you touch dead people.
I didn't realize it till later, because I did find you can find it in a storage container, like a storage room, where you open up the storage room, and there's very much there's like an object that you see where it's like, oh, everyone implants these is at the base of your spine, where your brain meets your spine.
Yeah, right at the top of the brain stem, I believe. Yeah, right over there where the implant is, right in the observatory where the first monster, the construct, ends up finding you.
Yeah, I didn't catch it at first, so I saw that, but it didn't take me till later. Whenever I think Catherine tells you, I think you tell her like, oh yeah, I keep reading dead people's minds. She goes, oh yeah, you're reading the black box in everyone's head, and that's when it clicked for me, like, oh, that's what that thing I was found earlier. That makes more fucking sense.
Yeah.
But it's also what the WAU, the WAU?
The Warden Unit.
Yeah, isn't that what's copying everyone's memories or some shit like that?
No, I don't.
No, it was humanity that was doing that. The Warden Unit's goal is purely one, and that is save humanity. Really, really keep humanity protected after it was originally created to be help for the station.
Yeah.
What do you mean AI will turn out bad? Hey, let's have AI run everything in real world. How about that? Huh? Because it's cheaper. Every time when I see stuff like that, I'm like, have you guys not watched Terminator? Like,
that's because I keep seeing stuff about that too, where it's like, oh yeah, we made AI Seinfeld. It was AI Seinfeld and AI. What was it? I think it was Family Guy. Yeah, Family Guy. Where it's like it only took 30 days before the show became racist and transphobic, and we had to turn it off.
Yeah, and then it got kicked off of a platform, and then they put it on a platform that it can't get kicked off of because there's no regulation.
Oh,
they put it on Truth? Wasn't it?
They put it on. I think it's a. What's
Not
the name
Twitch.
of that? What's that one that Andrew Tate had to move to?
Kick or Rumble, one of those.
Yeah, it was that one, Rumble.
Was Andrew Tate in prison?
He's in prison now,
know.
I think.
He was the guy that ordered a pizza and then he pretty much got arrested from it, right? That guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe when you're a criminal, you shouldn't. Or if you're wanted by the police, maybe you shouldn't be posting things on social media. Who would have thought? Okay, that makes sense. I was just curious because, I was also watching a documentary episode from Bill Gates, interviewing Bill Gates, and they were talking about AI and they would how AI can teach itself. And they're like, yeah, we got to be careful because eventually AI we don't want AI to get just too much and too much and too much. And then I play a game like this and I'm like, yeah, we're heading down this path. I feel like
Didn't the AI that they made to that bank company or the dictionary company made to do chess, didn't it become self-aware and kill itself or something?
I think so. I think you're right.
I'm probably right.
Oh yeah, that one that was like moving boxes. There was a robot that was moving boxes for Amazon or something like that. It was under experiment, but then it died after 30 minutes and then people started joking that it gave up because it realized how terrible the job is.
Oh, it did give up because it realized how terrible the job was. That's the even worse part.
Yeah, just make them computers. We don't need AI. But yeah, I mean I didn't really understand what the WAU was really in this game for a very long period of time. Throughout this game, you see a couple robots that can kill you. The robot that I see underwater, it looked like a little torpedo. Can that thing kill me with the red eyes?
Oh, it I think it can, but it takes a very, very long time because it's actually the least damaging enemy in the game. It's also easy to outrun, and it's the only enemy I believe that there are truly multiple of.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't die, so I was curious.
Yeah, I was with Mike on that one. I played this on story mode too because I was like, I don't have time to fucking run around and do shit and avoid enemies.
I still try to avoid enemies. I still try to play it as if I could die. I just didn't have the stress because I knew I couldn't. But I still would try to play stealthy. I would still try to run by enemies. I just didn't give a shit if I ran past you.
I thought you were mentioning because that little robot that's in the water. I wasn't sure if it could kill you or not because whenever you play in story mode, it just kind of goes up to you and it's like, you want to take a fight? And it's like you're just standing there and it goes, that's what I thought, and it fucks off. And it's like, oh, that's supposed to attack me because later on you're in underwater and it's ramming the fucking glass. So I was like, I guess it's supposed to be aggressive when you go outside.
It's called the Scavenger, and there are a few encounters of it, and I don't see anything in the description about whether or not it can kill you. But if I remember correctly, you can. You just have to really let it actually let it kill you.
Okay. I was just curious because I took its battery out at one point because I needed a battery for something.
Yeah,
that was a different one. That was a different unit.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, that's the other one. That was the cute one.
Yeah, he was. There was that. That one is the harmless one, and then there's the one that actually talks before you get to Theta, and that was actually a worker that was turned into a worker robot.
Yeah, I mean, this is every one of these things that you're coming across has a personality of someone who was on this underwater station or complex, however you want to think about it.
Isn't that just so depressing?
Yeah, because that kind of sets up for what the whole narrative kind of ends up being about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably about this time that Simon has been told what he is.
Yeah, but I thought he was a brain in a robot body. That is not a robot body that he is in.
No.
Yeah, one thing I'll at least give this game, it gives you pretty much it answers every question it has, which I think is also really good too.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get teased in the beginning, which also, Mr. Albertin, if I had a nickel for every time you made me play a fucking walking sim where your choices don't matter, I have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot.
What's the other one?
But it's weird that it's happened twice. Fucking BioShock Infinite. This game gives you.
It's not a walking sim.
I know, but I joke. But it's first person. But it's technically Firewatch too. Yeah, I didn't play that, but Firewatch also counts. Where
that's a walking sim.
A lot
yeah,
of your
that
choices,
is 100%.
Yeah, you have a lot of choices, but they don't really affect your ending. They just kind of affect the story.
Well, the choices you make in the game do affect certain things.
Because there's a tease earlier whenever you're trying to go up top to talk to Catherine through like the radio, and it's a robot that's dying, and you can turn that power node off to turn it off completely and kill it, or you can turn a different one off. But when you meet it, it's like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, oh, you're just a robot, and he's like, I'm not a robot. What are you talking about? And he never says you're a robot, but he's like, why are you talking to me like I'm a robot when you're whatever you are? And it's like, what do you mean? And it never really answers that question. But when later on, it makes sense. He's like, oh, because he can see you're a robot, but he won't. Just like how you want to admit you're a robot, he also want to admit that he's also a robot.
Yeah.
You know, he was going through the 12 steps this whole game.
Yeah. Not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a creepy moment too when you find out, when you first start realizing that. Because I had thought, okay, like there's some like people's consciousness were put into a robot, or I thought the AI had thought it was human or something of that nature. I mean, the whole idea is creepy as fuck, that it's your consciousness that was scanned at some point is then uploaded into a robot, but you don't really know that you're in a robot body. Your consciousness doesn't know.
Yeah. And even then when you start to think about it, it can mess with your mind, which also this is a very key point in this. I mean, Simon, as he knows it, he went in for the brain scan, and next thing he knows, he's on this station. He's not sure how he got there, because all he remembered the last thing was sitting in the chair for the brain scan to be done.
Which tells you that, unfortunately, the brain scan itself was a partial success, but he died very shortly after.
What?
Yeah, you find out one of the notes.
Yeah, you do in a voice message.
And it's also shown the more you play that his brain scan actually was one of the blueprint models for AI.
And so was Munchie's.
So what was the point originally for his brain scan? Was to see what was wrong with his brain and try to fix it, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Try and find a solution. They found something, but it didn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's essentially what he got to lose.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be dead anyway. So you're like, I mean, that's the other part that I like. The guy's like, hey, you're coming to work? Like, I'm going to die in a few months. Why am I coming to work? Fuck you. Like,
I can't remember if this is explicitly said in the game, but with Dr. Munchie being uploaded as well, was the intention then, Michael, maybe you know, to fix, quote unquote, fix Simon's brain injury? Essentially, they will put your consciousness in a body that can live. And so, because you do that a couple of times throughout the game where you need to transfer consciousness to a new unit. And so was that the original goal of he was never going to get like a brain scan and then surgery and then keep living his life. He was always uploading it. Was that kind of like the intention from the beginning? Like even in the prologue there to like upload his consciousness again to something new?
To my knowledge, Dr. Munchie would then be a villain at that point. I believe Dr. Munchie to have been a completely neutral character. From my understanding, Munchie was in a state of good intent at first. He was working with another doctor to create this private practice to try to create a breakthrough in the medical field, and he figured that because he had nothing, Simon figured that because he had nothing better to do effectively at that point, he was either contacted by Munchie and was asked to volunteer for this, or he found Munchie and contacted him about that. I believe it was the other way around. They may have somehow got access to medical documents to learn of Simon in order to contact him in the first place, which is questionably legal if you think about it in the United States. I don't know how it operates in Canada, because you can't just look through patients' files and then find, oh, this would be perfect for my research. You can't just do that as far as I know.
You can't.
Also with Munchie, there was a line that stood out to me as kind of interesting where once you find him they're renting a space in some building and you have to find him in the building. He goes like, "Oh, you're Dr. Munchie?" And he's like, "Well, I'm working on that." Like he's not even really a doctor at that point. He's like working with
Yeah.
it
was part of his thesis to kind of he wanted to, it seems like he would want to be like, he was a student that wanted to be head and shoulders above all of his other students, all of the other people in his class. Let's just say maybe he was trying to pursue something greater for humanity. Maybe he was trying to do it just for vanity, but at the same time, it's still a medical practice, which solemn oath.
I think, I'm hoping it never happens to me or anyone else I know. Either way, I like to think that there is something where you could tell your doctor, because at this point it's like, hey, you got anywhere between jokes, but you got anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 months to live. And like, if you get past 2 weeks, we'll go from there. I think you can legally tell your doctor, like, hey, if there's anything anyone's testing, I'm willing to try it. It's because it's better than surviving for like 6 months. So like, you can, you'll be in kind of with doctors who are like, oh, I've got this experimental medication. It might work, it might not. And it's the idea of like, you could probably be like, yeah, I'm going to fucking try anything if it'll keep me from dying, or even if it'll keep me alive for another year.
I think that's a realistic thing. Like, I think that's how it works.
Yeah, it's kind of like an organ donor type of situation, provided, it kind of like the inverse of that now that I think about it, because, you're dead, but you're willing to still help people. But if you're still alive and you're going to die, there's experimental stuff that before you go out, you can try, you might as well. You might find something good.
I think that's the plot to House.
And there's people who want to donate their bodies to science.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and you get people who want to know every possible solution. And a doctor has obligations to tell you they tell you all the medically approved solutions, and they can caution you about others that are in progress. That's at least what the responsible ones do. Because let's face it, you go into some place and say, hey, and they tell you, you have this problem. Now, there are these things that you can try. There are these things that are being worked on, but we don't know a lot about them yet. So if you want to even attempt those, that is your call. I don't necessarily agree with them, but they're your call.
Have any of y'all seen the Saw movies? All of them?
I've only seen the first 6.
I know enough about them.
Yeah.
There's a prequel Saw movie like that because he has cancer, so he ends up going to like a place where like, oh, we are inventing a new way to cure cancer. But what they are, they're a scam agency, and they just scam people. So they go, oh yeah, the chemo worked, and then the person dies. Yeah, the person dies of cancer.
It's all 10.
The 10? Okay, yeah. And they end up like just like, oh, how do you guys get away with it? Oh, well, the people don't actually cure the cancer, so they die and they can't report us. And it's like, oh, that's what you get for experimenting. You can't. It shouldn't be that worryable, but it's also a thing like you should be careful when you experiment like that too.
It says here on the Soma wiki, together with his colleague Paul Berg, a graduate student in neuroscience, Munchie was developing the neurograph Nakajima at Pace Laboratories in Toronto. Munchie's objective was to scan a damaged brain to produce a computer model, conduct tests on the model without risk, and find the optimal treatment for the patient.
Oh, okay.
So it was a medical advancement.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
and it
the
was
idea.
in good faith.
And I'm not throwing the guy under the bus with the, I'm working on the doctor thing. I was just thinking how sketchy that whole situation for Simon would have been, where he's got to go in their email to find their door lock combo and find them in the back of some locked room. And he's like, anyways, yeah, I'm like a college student and I'm going to work on your brain today. Bold of him to go with that. But like you said, he didn't have much to lose, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to die in a few months, so you're like, all right, what the fuck? Like, what do I,
I might as well let this grad student just carve my head open and see if he can straighten that out.
Sometimes when people are facing the end of their life, if they're young, they are more willing to take the risks.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want a person who's like in their 90s and they've been diagnosed with a terminal disease and it'll kill them in so many. They're not necessarily going to be ready to say, hey, I want to live for a couple more years. No, they're going to say, hey, I'm ready to check out. I've lived a good life. they're not going to want to, prolong it. I mean, we're doing this right now. We're going through something like this with my grandmother at this time.
Oh.
She's in her 90s. There's something going on with her. I mean, yeah, she doesn't want to die in a certain way, but she'd like to know what's going wrong with her body right now. So, she has a little bit more of an idea what's going to happen to her.
Yeah, the fear of not knowing.
Yeah.
And then there's the doctors who don't want to, take certain risks because, let's face it, if I put you under to do this, there's a good chance you're not waking up anyhow.
Yeah, and then there's also consequences for that doctor, depending. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this was just a scan, so it doesn't, he isn't doing anything where, you're not going to wake up from. It's just the fact that with the scan, he's able, you know everything up to day, this day, and then everything's a brand new world. It wasn't until very late in this game that I realized that you were in a dead person's body.
Yeah.
They tell you.
I didn't put it together. I really thought he was just a robot. I thought he was just in a robotic body. And it wasn't until when you go into the other body later on, that's when I realized that, it literally is, you are a little computer thing that you shoved into somebody's body, torso, because the head's missing. Oh, why are the heads missing on people? I forgot. I know there's a reasoning for it, but I forgot what it was.
I don't remember.
I believe it was the destruction, to ensure the destruction and lack of recovery for the black box.
Mm.
Oh, that was done by the WoW, right? Or was it done by the people on the stations?
I believe the ones where heads were missing was Kron, which is not Omicron. Is it Omicron? It's the station that right before the Abyss, right?
That Theta?
No. Well, Theta is right there, and then there's the one that actually has the unit that the elevator to lower you down to the Abyss. Let me find the location.
I do like it that it's a bunch of different little stations that you go from point A to point B, and that you try to use other methods, but things fall apart. Like you take a train car thing at one point, and then that gets destroyed.
Yeah.
I liked it. You take a Zeppelin at one point, but I mean, there's certain parts you're just walking underwater, and it's just so fucking creepy. And
yeah, the sea walks were some of the scariest stuff for me, especially the one part where you're in a really dark ocean.
Yeah,
you're going through kind of underwater caves, I think.
Yeah, you go from 377 feet at Site Omicron to suddenly 13,497 feet, the depth of the Titanic.
Yeah, and it's just, that was some of the best, my favorite audio design too, because it's so dark and you can kind of just get the impression of stuff around you, but you can't really see, and it's a really terrifying part of the game.
Is that where the anglerfish is, or is that deeper when you go in the trench?
It's in the area where the anglerfish is, but that's throughout the bottom of the Abyss. The Abyss, by the way, the sound of the metal groaning around you from these big structures that happen to have been built down there, very impressive, and also sounding kind of like thunder, which I've been told is a thing if there is high turbulence at the literal depths of the ocean, at the really far down.
Can you imagine?
This is definitely not a game for someone with thalassophobia.
This game is probably the pinnacle of thalassophobia.
I mean, it does a good job of changing up where the pace is. Where you have moments you're just exploring, then you have moments where you actually are doing some puzzle solving, and there's some moments where you're being chased. But it feels like the game isn't unfair or really that mean to you.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel that way to me. I mean, I could die, but
like I kind of said earlier, I think it's one of the best paced one of these kind of games. It never really gets stuck on any one thing for too long before kind of pulling you to the next sequence.
IGN complained about that, so the pacing was bad in this game. I'm pretty sure. I listened to a review right before this, and I'm like, man, IGN.
I would really just, I think the pacing's pretty spot on for something like this. I know it's maybe, we keep calling it a walking sim, so maybe it is a little on the slow side compared to even stuff like Outlast. I feel is so in your face with its horror and stuff, where I feel a lot of this is a little, like we were saying, more psychological, a little more moody. Maybe
but I think that
philosophical, if you want to get into kind of the stuff that it gets into towards the end, is
yeah.
I can understand it being slower paced, but I think it's very good in its pacing.
And we haven't really discussed much of the big story about how he's stuck in this situation because literally the world has basically hit an end.
Yep.
Earth
And
is toasted.
the comet had struck the Earth, destroyed all life on the surface. The only people that survived were already underneath the waves in the Pathos 2 station. And the fact that from some sort of, I don't think the means of how the Simon we play as was woken up. We don't know. I don't think that's actually explored. But the fact that we are given the impression that we are still the same character for the entirety of the game, only to have it dropped on us multiple times that we are a literal copy that is living on from the moment that the brain scan ended
Yeah.
to then having to transfer our conscious to a new body, which means that character, that Simon literally had to end there at Omicron, right before plunging to the depths of Phi and Tau, to then, in its finality, the most depressing thing imaginable, that you in your naivety, your ignorance, destroyed, you had your consciousness transferred successfully along with Catherine's, only to realize then and forever you will sit in the depths of that station, 14,000 feet,
Well, I'm
with nothing around you.
assuming you will just be crushed to death at some point.
Or the power will run out.
The power will fail, and you see the power of,
Yeah.
you see the station's lights dying, which means your own are the last light to die.
It's depressing. I mean, you really see it when when you switch from the one body to a second body because you need the suit.
Yeah.
And when you switch it, the other body is still talking. He goes, hey, wait, why is Simon talking over there? And she's like, we copied you. We didn't transfer you.
Actually, that first copy, I think that one is gone into a sleep state.
Yes. And you can either, he's like, he'll wake up. She's like, eventually, yeah, he'll wake up. And he'll be trapped here? She's like, yeah.
And it just has to be soulless like that.
Yeah.
I unplugged them.
So did I.
The theme of copying your consciousness and repeatedly showing yourself, like, you leave the perspective of a body into a new one, and you see the character you were controlling. And I think Michael just described what the ending is. And I think the reason the ending hit me so hard is the game doesn't hide what's going to happen. And if you're thinking about it logically on your way there, you can understand how it's going to go down. But I remember the first time I played it, I was still caught up in the moment of you're trying to you got to get to the arc. Everything's going crazy. And you're watching that progress meter of the copy upload, and you're thinking we're going to make it. We're going to get out of here. And then it all clicks. And then you're still sitting there and you're like, wait, I can't leave here.
You can't leave.
It's that gut punch of that realization that he is still going to be in this body.
Mm-hmm.
You're now seeing the perspective of all the bodies you've left behind throughout the game. And I think the hardest gut punch for me too, following just that that crushing realization of what they do with the copying the copying logic in the game, is that he freaks out, and kind of understandably, even though he should have known better at that point. And the last interaction between him and Catherine are then screaming at each other and fuck you, fuck this, fuck everything. And you're watching as he's getting angry, the lights just starting to die out room after room, and one monitor flicks off, and then it's pitched, everything goes out. It's darkness. Simon breaks, and the last words he says is don't leave me alone here, or whatever. And then it rolls credits, and it's so it's brutal.
It is grim.
Did the power go out because they launched the gun?
Yeah, the gun consumes an unholy amount of power, and that was pretty much the last of the station's power.
Okay, I was wondering exactly why that happened. Because the whole idea is that you're trying to get the Ark. I thought the Ark, for the longest time, was going to be some kind of ship that was going to send them out to space.
That's what I thought the first time, too.
This isn't a Roland Emmerich film.
I did not realize the Ark was a NATO box. Not realize that until I'm when you first get the Ark, I'm this is not what I was expecting.
It's what I figured it. I mean, that part didn't necessarily surprise me. I mean, you have to solve the one puzzle you have to solve is getting everything on there so it works proper.
Which uses like, what is it, like 3.5 petabytes of data?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not that they're hiding it from you at any point. I think it's just easy to get, like, I feel something I adjusted to this playthrough was kind of sympathizing with Simon and his inability to accept, like, that he's being copied into new content. Because he keeps running into this where, you know, he thinks he's going to get transferred or he thinks it's going to be a continuous thing for him. And it's not. And I was thinking it would be really hard to accept, like, that logic if you just blinked your eyes and you're from Toronto, like, one day and now you're in the bottom of the ocean. And, like, I just, like, it's really hard to accept that, I think. And you get kind of caught up in the moment of trying to get onto the Ark. And you, like Mike said, like, I also thought it was going to be like a shuttle, like some sort of blast off thing, and we get out of there. And then you realize it is just that box.
It's also shown that what's been going on. I mean, she was trying to get the crew to do that to help save humanity. And she sort of understood what was going on. But
She was the
nobody
only
else.
one that was selfless.
She was also the only one who understood the one key thing that nobody seemed to be getting. Every time a brain scan would happen, they expected, once it's uploaded, I'm not supposed to be in my body. And when they came out and, like, did it work?
It worked.
But they don't
Catherine's
think
the
it
only
worked.
one who understands the consequence, like the reality of what happens with that
Yeah,
transfer process.
I mean, I think in this situation where it's either you completely die or at least your consciousness somehow gets to live in a shape or form. Like, yes, it's terrible that this Mike is stuck here, but the other Mike that's also me gets to have a good life. Like, you know, I guess that's one way to kind of look at. I was thinking about it.
This game is simultaneously tackling many incredibly difficult topics to even conceive of and write properly. Existentialism, what it means to be human, and selfishness. How humans are, we are innately selfish to ourselves. It is a grim tale, and because of how masterfully it conveys these things, that is why I find it to be probably among the top 3 games I've ever played.
Basically, it puts it down to the simplest of terms. And that as of our minds, we can't fully wrap it around what it would be like. I mean, when they're uploading the brain scan is basically uploading your mind. But when you upload a file, do you fully erase it from your source computer? No, not unless you actively. Some people do.
I do.
And you unplugged the other Simon. So
I unplugged the other Simon. Each time I saw a person, I unplugged them too. The couple times you run into people, I unplugged them. When the woman said, "Let me die," I'm like, all right, turn you off. Like, yeah, I was a murderer.
I think.
Is it murder or is it putting them out of their misery as they asked you to? That's another moral question.
One person asked you to. I don't think the woman that's hooked up the machines asked you to, but the one on life support, she does ask you to.
Yeah.
Kind of just to go off too, because this is something that really I've been thinking about from the post-credit scene. And we kind of brought this up with what it means to be human and everything. Because after you see Simon alone in the dark and everything, and credits roll, then you wake up again and you're in a cave, and then you step out into just beautiful nature, and there's a majestic sci-fi city, and you see Catherine, and she tells you that you did it, like, we made it, everything's all right now. And that's the good timeline for Simon. And then the thing that sticks with me so much about that ending is you feel hopeful, and then the last thing it shows you is the satellite that the Ark is on it shows you it floating, and you see the Earth, which is just scorched, no life left, and then you just see the satellite the Ark is in float off into space. And the thing that, like, what it means to be human is, like, Simon's technically, like, going to live his life there, but all it is like a digital simulation of their consciousness, like basically in like a VR environment, just kind of saved on a hard drive, hoping to be found by some theoretical existence out in space as a like reminder of what humanity was.
Yeah.
And it's just a crazy ending.
I'd be fine with that.
We didn't touch on we also didn't touch on on Site Alpha, the Warden unit too much. We didn't touch on. We didn't talk about Dr. Johann Ross, and we also didn't talk about the last human.
But before we get to that, though, because we talked a little bit about Simon, I also want to really get into that stuff. One thing that I like to think, if anyone else had that kind of idea too, besides Simon's character, I also really liked Catherine's character, and I think her kind of being an opposite to Simon's really good, because I actually feel out of all the technically people you meet, she's the only person that's kind of accepted that she's technically a digital entity.
Yeah.
Because it happens a lot throughout the game, and her telling Simon, like, because it's a thing where you talk to her and she says, like, oh, you have to get over this stuff. Yeah, just pull plugs on these things. It doesn't really matter. Because I think it's a combination both of, well, I know if we get this done, everything will be fine. As long as I can say that got launched into space, and I know it got launched into space, I will be happy with myself. But it's also a thing of her also telling Simon, hey, don't worry about this stuff. I know it's weird. You won the coin toss. Just be happy about that, because if not, I mean, don't even think about it anyways, because you turned your old version of yourself off. So you're pretty much good for the most part. And him reacting the way it does is pretty much like how most people would react. But I like to think the idea of both of them are basically the same side of like the robot coin, where one person is very much too human and the other person is very much like, oh, I've come to accept that I'm a robot. It's whatever. And I just need to do what I have to do.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. I know from reading some or watching the YouTube video explain some of the story that a bunch of people were committing suicide on this, that were in this base, because they wanted to make sure that their consciousness went to the Ark.
That's what I was saying.
Which makes sense. I mean, the world is hopeless. There is no life for anybody, period. Like, I think it all makes sense. In that case, like, what are you going to do when the world is destroyed and you're just stuck down here in an underwater?
Well, also, Michael, I hope you can answer this for me too. Were they already in the water when the meteor hit, or did they go underwater? Okay.
Yes, they were.
Okay, so it's kind of like the idea of, which I never would want to think about it. It's like being sent out into space, and then a meteor hits Earth, and it's like, oh, we're the last people in space, and we're the last of humanity alive.
Yeah, good luck. You have basically no oxygen in comparison to everybody else that did.
Yeah, and also, they even make a comment, they only have so many supplies. Like, eventually they're going to run out of supplies. Like, they're not, you don't run in any gardens down here. They're not growing their own food. They're not producing their own water. Like, they're not producing things that they can survive.
And it's also because of that they started, trying to ingest stuff that they shouldn't be ingesting, which is what caused them to mutate.
Is that what caused WoW?
Yeah, WoW was basically, from what I've gathered, it was an AI that was to help them, but it was also it was trying to do what it could with the limited knowledge it was gaining. I mean, let's face it, a child is being told, learning the job. It's always a learning process, and at least you got the big parent up there helping you out. You could ask a question of them, and they can help you. And then the parent goes silent.
Yeah.
So the Warden unit, which is what WA Warden U unit was specifically created, yes, to be an aid to the system, to be an aid to the station. It's a station-wide AI. It was constructed by Carthage Industries with the intent of overseeing all the operations. And Dr. Johann Ross was the overseer and operator of it. When the meteor hit, its directive shifted, and it became preserve humanity.
Yep.
And when it says preserve, when it means keep humanity alive, it means by any means necessary. And this can involve, like, we find, I think her name was Amy, that was in the subway station. she was found connected to the Warden unit unwillingly, from her own words. Nothing is allowed to die, she says. And you can see that the kind of H.R. Geiger looking creature next to her is like some sort of weird artificial lung system keeping her alive, even though she is basically unable to otherwise leave. She is alive. She's alive, and therefore the Warden unit has achieved its mission. On to the next, kind of a thing. That it didn't operate within it has to be within reason, or this human must be fully restored to how they were before their injury.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not evil. It seems it, but it's not trying to be evil. It's not thinking it's evil. It's thinking it's doing the right thing, if you can even say that. It doesn't have the ethical question.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the Warden unit kind of exists outside of like morality. Like, it's not thinking in terms of like right or wrong. It's following its objective, which in this scenario led to these kind of like horrific outcomes, I guess. But like, it's not really thinking like, oh, this isn't like ethical treatment of a person. It's just thinking like, all right, this person's alive, green check mark on like the to-do list. Like,
I mean, it makes sense from a computer standpoint when your objective is to keep humanity alive. I mean, it's not the computer's fault that there are no other options. I mean, it's just, is that being alive? And the real question.
Yeah.
And the answer is no for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a question that a machine can't answer.
And it's a question that comes up again in the ending, like I was kind of talking about, where like Simon's living his life in terms of being like a computer program now. Like, is that being alive? Because he's got his consciousness, even though he's not like organic or like biological at that point.
I say yes, and in this scenario, what are the options that you do not exist anymore? I mean, yes, humanity at this point is a dead race, but as a guy who watched a lot of Star Trek, like the idea is that there has to, and I believe this in our real world, that there has to be other intelligent species out there who just follow a version of the Prime Directive, like, no, Earth, this planet's too stupid, we ain't interfering. That's what I believe is why we never, I mean, I do believe that the alien sightings aren't all fake that people see out there, and some they do see things. But, like, that idea is what I was thinking about, too, with this game, is that, it very much could be something like that, where it's just, this is how, like this is the only way to continue humanity. And if that's your only case, well, then it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't have a choice.
Definitely. I think it's something I was thinking about the game is that I think it's good at being scary in the immediate, like, the sound design, the atmosphere, everything is creepy. You can scare, like, oh, but it's also scary in the, like, it's kind of haunting. Like, you think about the conclusions that this game goes towards, and Simon being alone down in the station until everything breaks down, or the fact that the whole planet is scorched and all that remains of Earth is a hard drive floating in space hoping to be found. Like, it's good at being scary on like a long term, like it's just uncomfortable to think about some of that stuff. So it's not, it's good at being scary right in front of you with the monsters and stuff, and then scary kind of in like the theoretical, like what that stuff could mean, I guess.
But humanity would survive in a sense that the idea is that somebody would find it. I believe somebody would, and then they are able to at least understand what this race was and what this species was that existed here.
It would all depend on who finds it.
Yes.
I mean, if they get the alien equivalent of the hick hillbillies, hey bud, we could use this to add to our space, our computer space. All we gotta do is reformat it.
Hopefully, there's on the board to find it.
It's either that, or assuming that, the aliens that if they do find the Ark, which by the way, it's an acronym. But of course, it's designed to look like the Ark of the Covenant, kind of, but it's ARC stands for Artificial Reality Capsule.
Oh,
no, they probably had their top men working on it. I'm sure they're top.
And by the way, Mike, when you mentioned Star Trek, there is an episode of Star Trek that addresses something similar to this. Well, Star Trek: The Next Generation.
You talking about the one when they go to the weapons planet and they find the dealer?
No.
Oh.
The Schizoid Man.
Ah, that's the one with his grandfather of Data, essentially?
Dr. Ira Graves. He's it has terminal stages of his illness, but of course, he doesn't want to.
Yes, he uploads his brain into Data. To know him was to love him, and to love him was to know him. Yes, that episode. Good episode, by the way.
Never seen a single episode of Star Trek.
You should watch Next Generation. Just skip I can tell you what episodes to watch of season 1 so you don't leave upset before you even get to the good stuff.
This is all, again, assuming that the aliens even have the ability to decipher what the hell technology humanity has conceptualized as a proper medium of storage.
Hey, look at the bright side. We wouldn't know either way if we were in that box.
Exactly.
True.
And that's there's beauty and terror in that thought, and that's one of the things that Soma continuously tries to tell you.
Yeah.
Don't worry, be happy. If they played that song by Bobby McFerrin at the end, that would have been the biggest troll.
But it's the idea, so I do have a couple questions about Catherine, because you find out near the end of the game that Catherine was killed because she wanted to launch the Ark, and I think they accidentally killed her.
Oh, that does not look like an accident. It looks like they took like a whole ass fucking like a crowbar to the back of the pipe to the back of her fucking head. Like they say, the guy says it was an accident, but by accident I mean I think what they meant is she turned around and he just whacked her as hard as he could, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't actually mean to fucking kill her. Oops, poopsie."
I mean, so is the computer aware that she's dead, that you're talking to?
The warden unit?
No, I know the WoW note, because Catherine herself. Do you think she's aware of any of this? Dan was before then.
She I think you have the option to actually no, it's not an option. If you walk to a specific point in the game after finding the body, your character openly talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Confides in her.
I know he tells her about her being dead, but I thought there was something else.
She asks how if you keep going, she asks how that happened, and he says it looks like it was an accident. But the same thing as I said, she basically goes, "Oh, they fucking killed me, didn't they?" And he's like, "Well, it was an accident, if that helps."
It is ruled an accident. We can never get the actual truth on the matter because all parties involved are gone.
Yeah. The alien looking thingy that follows you around a couple times and kind of is directing you, was that a person that was trying to get you to kill the WoW?
That is Dr. Johann Ross.
Okay.
He is the progenitor of the warden unit entirely.
And that's him, right? That's not like a robot or a copy or anything.
It is him.
Okay. I do like that because you put that containment gel on yourself that you are able to destroy the WoW. So I think that's interesting.
And then he tries to destroy you in the process.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. He seemed to have gone mad by his own thought process, unable to convince himself otherwise that there is no other way to actually successfully eliminate the warden unit. He seemed kind of nuts, like, the whole I will be waiting or something like that. I think he says that while you are on the elevator and he forcibly shuts it off.
Oh yeah, and you have to mess with the power switch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You first see him in Omicron.
That was so fucking creepy when you go down into the trench area. God, that was a creepy moment. Everything with that, walking in the dark.
There is nothing but literally a slowly darkening gradient, and there is nothing out there. You can't see it.
I like it. That's what it is. I think we have done a little bit of research as a species down in that area, and you can't see anything. They don't know much what's down there.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the So I mean, you take a look at it this way. I mean, think of it how the Ocean Gate submersible took so long to find, and it was found 990 feet from the Titanic's bow. And that's because visibility, even with the most powerful lights, is not even 50 feet because of how insanely dark it is.
This is another reason why I have no interest.
The ocean.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine, we were talking with a couple yesterday, we'll say, and she's like, "Hey, you guys should go on a cruise." And my wife's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, I don't like water. I'm not interested in being on the ocean.
I like water way too much.
I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll stay here on land.
I'm like, fuck it, man. I'm down, dude. Put me in a big diving suit that's like made of tank armor and throw me into the ocean.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Don't put you in a big metal coffin with a controller and a little key and a little monitor to see where you're going, though, huh?
Yeah, maybe not that.
Are you going to be able to do some of the stuff in Assassin's Creed Black Flag then, Mike?
I'll be fine. I'm not physically underwater, so it's okay. I'm just not like I just don't like. Well, I'm just not a big fan of the oceans. But that's real life me. The internet me, Avatar. That's fine. Well, if I die and we upload my brain into a robot or a dead person, hey, I'll go out in the ocean. What do I got to lose? I'm already dead. So that's different. Or any other things that we haven't touched on that we should mention?
I'd like to touch on the music. If we could, we might as well just like collectively click the link at the same time and watch the video. It's not very long. It's like 2.5 minutes.
That's longer than.
I don't know if we'll hear the noise through the headphones.
We won't. Not with me, but I'm muted.
Yeah, so I'm gonna watch it just to touch up on it again. I don't know how many times I've seen this video, but
that's too much talking. I can't. You can watch it out, but I gotta keep talking. I don't want to edit out 2 minutes of silence.
That's perfectly understandable.
But from my just experience with the music, I think it's well done. It's very creepy. I am not. Anyone who listens to me talk on this podcast enough knows that I am not a big person when it comes to sound and music in games and in general. But I am trying to be better, especially with horror games. I try to play with sound on at all times.
And that is in particular the most important thing within horror games. Horror games' biggest strength is its usage of light for dark, which effectively means light in darkness, whereas dark for light, meaning trying to create darkness in a bright situation. So this is dark. This is light for dark. And the musical instruments that Mikko Tarmia used to make this are a series of synthesizers and a modular synthesizer unit called a Eurorack. Euroracks are entirely modular. So you can actually put in your own modules that fit the same standardized frame, and they can all interact with each other by plugging cables into different patches and changing levels to make an incredibly unique sound purely by analog input. And it is because of this that the soundtrack is so... It's a one of one. The units that he used are for his Eurorack include what he calls them alien modules, but they're actually by a specific company. I looked into these units. They're very, very well made. And in fact, one of these units that he used is actually called the Dalek, which is specifically designed to kind of sound a little bit like a Dalek from Doctor Who. Other synthesizers he used are like the Korg MS-20, which is an iconic instrument from the 80s. It's also got semi-modular patch units, so he connected it to that, which was then also connected to a bunch of effect pedals, then connected to the actual instrument he was playing from, which is an analog input controller from a company called Akai that actually reacts and like an analog stick does in a video game to the amount of air you are pushing through the digital unit. So it changed the amount of reverb, the vibrato of the unit. I'm effectively kind of nerding out in this little area here, but it's just you can tell that the music director for this game, who also did the music for Amnesia: The Dark Descent, is coming from a place of passion.
Yeah.
100%. And it's because of that I feel it lends itself to the story so incredibly well.
I get it. I've always loved whenever people do different kind of thing with music, and especially whenever I see people do, like, I've never seen that instrument like ever, and it honestly looks like the coolest fucking thing. And I have to be very careful because if I show it to my husband, he will want one. Doesn't care the price. He'll probably end up wanting one. But yeah, no, I've always been a big fan whenever people are like, oh yeah, I'm known for doing music for these bunch of games, especially being like a big Silent Hill fan. Like, I love when it's like, oh yeah, we've gotten the same person to do all the music, and they have their own way of perfecting it and things like that. It's always cool.
I find it interesting that he's calling the device a Dalek.
In fact, actually, the screenshot's a little bit blurry due to the aperture of the camera he was using here, I think, but
I gotta give people credit so much that can just make things with sound. I am not a sound person, even though my art is editing and creating podcasts. I am not a sound guy when it comes to music and creating sound effects. I never really mess with it, but I don't feel like I have the ear for it. And I give people huge props that can do that. I know, like, Helena had once made a comment. She made our lovely intro and outro music I mention every single time, and she once said, like, yeah, I can't do it again. It was like, at that moment I could, and I made it, and I don't do it anymore. A little bit more to it, but I'm going to leave it at that. But, like, it was just one of those things where it's like, yes, I mean, that creative mindset that a person has to make art like that is just always so impressive to me.
Yeah. And I don't have a lot of, like, knowledge on, like, you know, these kind of synthesizer, like, you know, all the cables plugged into. I play a little bit of guitar, a little bit of drums and stuff, so I got a little bit of music and everything. But I think stuff like this is so interesting because it's such a different way of, like, creating new noise. Like you were saying about being able to plug these different modules together and mess with them with vibrato and everything. Like, that's really kind of fascinating to me because it's like creating just new sounds. Like, I guess.
And that is exactly what it does. It creates. You can see here in the chat, I put in 2 screenshots the full Eurorack unit that he has here. It is. It looks like a mess of wires and knobs, but it all plugs in to. They all can connect to each other and create something completely different. Something as simple as patching one cable can change the sound entirely. It could be something completely different. It's not even just the tone. It could change the pitch and a whole bunch of other things as well. What is layered upon itself. And this is entirely built up with the idea of being a drone synthesizer, which he demonstrates in that video.
For those curious, you can Google, or you can look up on YouTube Soma behind the music and see what we're talking about.
The extent that you have to go through with these is a lot. The cost of entry is high, but you will get something that you can't get with a standard digital audio workstation. And that is, well, 1, a physical device to actually play with and use. And 2, being able to create something that pretty much nobody else has because Eurorack modules are completely able to work with each other.
That's really cool. I don't know. It's just amazing what people can do with sound and different effects, and you put it all together. Like, I've always been amazed by that. And this is so unsettling, and it works so good. Everything with this game was an incredible experience.
Yeah, it was.
It's definitely, well, I think Michael said earlier it's in his, like, top 3. It's not a top game of mine, but, like, in terms of, it's one of my favorite narratives in a game for sure. Like, it's a top 5 story in a game for me.
Casey, I wanted to ask you, since you were on the episode, did this remind you of Prey? Because it made me.
I was gonna joke that this is the second time I've been on to talk about creepy goo monsters messing up a science facility.
When I beat this game, I messaged Bill. I'm like, Bill, you need to play this game. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, put it on safe mode.
Prey without spoilers. Robot stuff, consciousness, etc., etc.
I'm talking to him tomorrow, and I'm gonna be saying the same thing. Like, Bill, play this. This is a Bill game. I'm like,
they're very similar, yeah. Or they feel like you could play them together and, like, you know, feel like connected media. You could come away with different thoughts from different. Like, they're very. I think there's a lot of overlap in, like, the themes and kind of stuff they go into.
Yeah, both involve the world in a very bad place.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny that y'all mentioned that, because this is the ending for this is how Prey 2 was originally supposed to end.
Oh, really? The canceled one?
Yeah, the cancel one. The plot for Prey 2 was you're supposed to be playing a bounty hunter that works for, like, the space FBI.
Yeah.
And so whenever you're hunting the main character, and you end up finding out that the space FBI is the aliens who you were fighting in the first Prey, and you end up finding out that every time you die, it is them bringing back another version of you and shipping it back to Earth to hunt the main character. So you team up with the main character from the first game to take them down. And he's like, oh, yeah, we did it, main character. We stopped the space aliens and blah, 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 and everything's okay. And it shows the current main character, which is the main character for Prey 2, the bounty hunter. He ends up, like, finding a family and getting old and everything else and dying of old age. and the credits rolled, and after the credits rolled, it would show him waking up on the space station that's blown up and being like, no, I'm still being cloned. Oh no, and he's stuck on the space station.
Oh, that is. I wish that game was close to being made, wasn't it?
It was like 60 or 70% done.
They've done worse. I think those games have been like 90-some% done. They just like, oh, we're done.
Or like the direction of games that didn't end up going the direction that the art director or the director originally didn't want it to. Rather wanted to, and it didn't end up going the way that they wanted it to. Like, I think Dead Space was supposed to not be action based. It was supposed to be a really dark story about schizophrenia.
That's another game that's psychological horror that I really, really like. I do have a thing for psychological horror.
Yeah, you
Psychological
do.
horror is done well. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I think it can get. I mean, like, horror is kind of about getting in your head, so there's kind of a natural reason why I think psychological horror can be really effective when it's done well.
Yeah, that's something that I'm noticing that I like more. I don't like slasher stuff. I don't like things with just lots of brutal killing. I don't like it when all the characters don't come out of it alive. Like, I just don't. It's not my type of stuff usually, but something like this, I like. I mean,
It doesn't feel.
alive, but still.
It feels like that. It's because I feel like the reason that you might like it is because it's not just they died the end. No, they died, but it is significantly more in depth than just they died. Here's why. Here's how.
It also makes sense that I agree with Catherine when it comes to like her idea to launch the arc into space, where like at one point you hear him say, why don't we just leave it here? Because we launch it, everything's over. But it's like, everything's over anyway. Let's say here you live another few months, you live another year, if even that long, like this existence isn't, like, at some point you're all going to be dead, as we see. Like, things are not going to last long. Terrible existence. And normally I don't like really depressing games. Like, I can't play the Walking Dead Telltale games, even though I want to, because they're just so fucking depressing that I have a hard time with it.
I keep telling you, we just got to get to the fucking second season, and then we'd be good.
I just don't want to.
I know.
Eventually it might happen. Eventually it's probably going to happen, but I don't know. There's no interest.
It's gotta be a Happy Mike week where we play season 2 of The Walking Dead, and then we review like a really happy kids movie that you really want to watch.
I do want to watch Pagemaster actually recently. I don't know why, but I really want to watch that movie again. When we were talking with Sierra for one of our episodes that we did, I think it involved the doll. I think it came up somewhere when I was talking with her, and I'm like, I should review Pagemaster. I haven't seen that movie in years, but that's neither here nor there. No, I don't know. At some point it's going to happen. There's so many games that I want to cover, and that's just not one that I have any interest in playing. So, yeah. There's only so many slots that I can fit. And I do make a lot of content, and I still run out of slots. That's why there's 3 episodes a week of this podcast, so I can cover more things that I want to talk about. And I still don't get everything I want. There's just too much stuff. Any last things to say about Soma? Because I'm just rambling.
It's a good game. Play it.
Good game, play it.
All right, let's go to questions.
Real quick, there was one thing I wanted. I know this is kind of just summary again, but I just think it's really interesting how the game ends for Simon, again, with like him being down in the darkness, because it feels like it ends where it begins, and that like this, the upload happens, everything like that, and then his consciousness is uploaded to the Ark, and then he's just sitting there, and we were saying, he's just basically going to sit there till the facility like crushes under the weight of the ocean or something. So he's got months to live. That's exactly where he was at the beginning of the game when he got the brain scan in the first place. That Simon would have just, gotten up out of his chair and just like had a few months to live. And I just think it's really like beautifully written, if extremely depressing, that like the story ends him in basically the same predicament.
I didn't think about that.
I have a chair.
At that point, At that point, you just spend the next however long you do to figure out how to rip your own heart out, to rip your to stop your battery from working.
I don't think it's going to take long, to be honest, at that point. Like, there's no power. I mean, I don't think the stuff that's keeping you alive, like keeping the place from not being crushed, is eventually, I think it's all going to be over very quickly. That's my thought pattern.
Yeah, eventually the plant life that's left in the station and the station's power shuts off. It's the plants that are in there are going to consume the oxygen. It's going to turn into CO2, which isn't going to it's not the same as oxygen. So that the pressure differential will then probably actually cause the station to eventually collapse in on itself. If not from failure due to age, from that. A difference in pressure.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then I did have one other question, I guess, that you might be able to answer. Did Catherine have any... Did she have a body at that point of any kind? Like how Simon still has like a body that's keeping him conscious and alive? Because is it just completely hope? Like when it goes dark, is he completely alone? Or is there a chance like if he wanders that station, he and Catherine might be able to meet up and at least like, hey, sorry about that before like everything, like, or is he just like alone forever?
He's alone forever, 100%.
Goddamn. Okay.
Yeah, it's that fucking dark.
I figured it was. I just like.
Yeah, because
Catherine's-
he can't die from starvation or dehydration because he's not human. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Catherine's,
Yeah.
He walked the ocean floor, so that's not going to do much for him.
Well, eventually, I mean, if he can get out of the station, he would eventually wander into something that would destroy his body.
Yeah.
But
Catherine's
probably can't get out while the doors are sealed.
Catherine's consciousness was transferred from a Windows XP machine. No, not really. It was big enough to be a Windows XP machine. Let's be real. And then put into the Omni tool. And the Omni tool was connected to the station when she was arguing with him and overloaded.
Out, that's the last of that consciousness.
Yeah, she just doesn't exist
that's what
anymore.
I thought. It's just in my head. I kept like, oh, maybe there's hope that he could like. No, there's no. That Simon doesn't have any hope left.
No, that Simon doesn't. Yeah, he's in a very bad situation. But I mean, the idea is that a version of you still lives.
For sure, it's
That's probably not very. It's a terrible way to go. It's a very depressing game. All right, let's go to questions, comments, and memories. I don't have a ton, but I have a few. I think some of my groups. From I watched the entire Orblood Super replay from Kevin Burge. I loved Soma. It's fantastic if you like horror. Agreed. From Nick Levac. I remember being pretty interested in Soma around when it came out, but now I don't even have the faintest idea what it looks like. Might be something to look into for spooky season. So since I hope he doesn't listen to this, I'm messaging. Well, I'm not messaging him. I'm going to comment because you should for sure. From Zach Harris, favorite game from Frictional Games is really love the entire thing, love the story, and love the atmosphere. Yeah. From Jordan Velez, one of the most terrifying endings in any media format, and not for the usual stereotypical horror tropes either. Not wrong. From Boston Sullivan, it has been a while and the details are fuzzy, but man, this was an interesting and sometimes really spooky game. From the official Laser Time community, from Chrissy Coe, literally one of the best horror games, stunning, no notes. From Ian Frederick, loved it, and the way it left a ton of hints about the ending along the way. Really liked the idea of setting something at the end of society. Oh, and this reminded me of something that I wanted to say, because from Matt Krieger, love this game, but the cover, I always see a clown face. That cover, once you beat the game, goes from like half a face to her face.
Yep.
Yeah, it becomes Catherine's.
That got me.
Oh, and also, if you play the game in bursts, as the story progresses, that face actually progressively becomes more and more clear.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yep, in the main menu.
I played this in a couple sittings.
Yeah.
Okay. From Kristen Trout, controversial take. I don't agree with any of the positive reviews. It's purely a depression simulator. That's fair. That is completely fair. This is a very depressing game. And this is a game that if you're not in a good place mentally, do not touch this game.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is depressing.
I have been in low points in my life, and I will tell people, like, if you're in a bad point, like, this is something that you should stay away from, because it's not really a game. It's more of an experience, in my opinion. I mean, it is a game, yes, in theory, but it's also like it's not like, oh, I'm going for the high score. Oh, look how, how badass I took out these enemies. No, it's an experience. It's a story. You're playing this for the story or to talk about it on a podcast. So, and then from the Survival Horror Sanctuary from Lee John Gabriel, it's a game where you have no weapons, you evade multiple entities, and have no understanding of what they are or why they are the way they are. All I know is that you have to survive. The story keeps you wondering and guessing the entire time. It was truly a mindfuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's fun sometimes. It just depends on what you like. And this is not a game for everybody. It's really not. But if you like psychological horror and you like existential crises, this is a good game. And from the last group, Survival Horror Games, from Z Omora, I can't pronounce her first name. Only game that legit gave me an existential crisis for a while. From Jake Weatherman, I cried at the end. And from Jesse Quincy, Soma is still one of the best games I played to this day. I get it. I get why people love this.
It's a really special game.
Yeah.
It is. And before we go to Shelf Stacker Box, I want to give away a code. And I have a code that feels perfect for this game, if you're listening. The code is ABZOO for Steam. 5OOFGEEBHTMPR66. That is your Steam code for ABZOO. I know it's an underwater game. That's all I know about it.
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
Never played it. I own it. So, yeah, one of those many
good,
things.
Cute. What name by the company? Developed by Giant Squid.
Yeah, I just know it's an underwater game. That's all I know about it, and I know I want to play it someday.
Thematic to the video, it seems. Yeah, I'm sorry, to the podcast.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I meant to do it a couple of weeks ago for Cold Fear, and I forgot. But I'm like, oh, well, this will be perfect. And then I played Soma. I'm like, oh, this will be perfect for Soma, because I really thought Soma was in space until I started the game.
That's fair.
What little I knew about it, I thought it was a space that you were in.
To be fair,
get there
the
eventually.
interior stations, they look like a space station. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's just where my brain had always been with it. So, well, I mean, I didn't know anything about it on purpose. I don't really go out of my way to stay away from things for games. I don't think I do. But, all right, let's go to Shelf Stacker Box. And Joe, why don't you lead us in?
I'll go ahead and put this on the shelf. I think this is a perfect opportunity. Honestly, I think safe mode is also really good too. I've always said I'm a really big fan whenever it makes it to where you can play a game just to enjoy the story, because people do have disabilities, and people, as I've said before, I do not have time for a lot of stuff either. So because the one reason I play this on story mode was because I did not have time to sit there and try to dodge enemies to get past them and die multiple times. So it's a given opportunity to be like, yeah, it's completely enjoyable. Plus the story itself, it's great. I think one thing we didn't talk about, which I completely forgot to as well, I like alien 80s horror. I hate whenever, like now, how we make all futuristic stuff like chrome and slim and small and bullshit. This perfectly encapsulates what the future would look like from like 2015, 2010.
Yeah, this is 2015, but yeah.
Yeah, and then I completely believe that's what the future would look like in general. Space station, underwater, building, whatever. So I completely I like a lot of stuff about this game. So yeah, I'd put it on the shelf.
All right, and Richard.
I've been debating it all, and I think for this one, I am going to put it on the stack, but it's very high on the stack, to be honest. I mean, this is a game that it is definitely an experience. This is a game that will really have you asking questions. Like you said, to just put someone in an existential crisis for a little bit. And, when you look at it, if your mind is not ready to accept certain details, it is going to leave your mind, wondering. And you have to be in a good place mentally to be able to handle all that. And I'm going to say this, it's definitely a game to experience. I'm not the kind of person that would play this multiple times, just say, hey, I'm going to pull this out and play that. I'm not about to do that for this one. I mean, eventually I'm going to play it on my channel at some point, hopefully. But, otherwise, I mean, for me, it's a stack game.
All right. And Casey.
For me, it's easy shelf. This is on the short list of like all-timer horror games, in my opinion. And top 5, top 3 like all-time video game endings. Like I think like the story is like genuinely like interesting enough to like, I know people say like, oh, this is like as good as a movie or something. I genuinely think this stands alongside like good literature in terms of just its themes and like being able to kind of pull at it and just kind of think on things and come to different conclusions at different points in your life and how you feel about stuff. And I like a lot of frictional games stuff. I think Amnesia the Bunker is my favorite game of theirs, but this is so head and shoulders narratively above most stuff in horror games, in horror. It's just, I think it's a really unique, special game. I recommend it to people all the time because of its narrative being as good as it is. I think it's like one of the best horror games ever made. So for me, it's easy shelf.
All right, I'll go next. This is also surprisingly going to go on the shelf for me too. I really had a good time. This was a hell of an experience. and I came into it with no expectations, just knew it was a game and hell didn't even know anything about it. And I really had a good time. I'm glad to finally be able to mark it off my list. So going on the shelf and really glad this happened. And Michael.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I've done nothing but give this game praise. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that, yeah, for me, it's 100% the shelf. Masterful storytelling, incredible writing, beautiful sound design, beautiful music, everything situational, good pacing, incredible monster design. Oh my God, Jin Yoshida is fucking scary as hell. That's the monster at Tau. And all of them, all the puzzles as well. While the first couple may have been just a little frustrating, honestly, I forgot about them and I forgot how angry I was at them later because I was so raptured by the story. It's just that good. For me, it's 100% the shelf.
Right. And I should introduce what we're talking about next week. Next week for episode 300, you can hear us talk about Persona 4.
I'll be there.
For 3 hours. I feel like it's going to be a long one, Joe.
It's going to be a long one. I hope you're ready for me to be wearing my Akechi tie because I am going to go Green Goblin.
We also have a large cast, too, so it's going to be a good one. I expect a lot of comments. But yeah, you hear Persona 4 next week.
Did you plan on it being like a big thing? Or
yeah, because all the 100, 50, 25, 50, I always try to do like a big RPG. Originally, it was supposed to be Xenogears for 300, but that had to get pushed sooner because 300 landed in Spooktober. So I got Persona 4 is close enough to a spooky game for me for an RPG. I was like, good enough. It involves murder. You're going into TVs. Close enough. So, all right. And I think that should take us to plugs. And Richard, where can people find you at?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Rich Kale, where I play through a whole bunch of different games. Let's see. Just trying to think what will be going up when this premieres. I mean, I'm going through various games. I play some spooky games. I play some humorous games on there. Let's see. When this goes up, I think you'll probably see me working on a Vampire. Let's see. Also the BioShock series. I think I'm currently on number 2 of that. Looking forward to playing through all 3 of them. So I'm getting there. But I also have stuff that premiere, like I also do fic stuff. I've got fics that go up on fanfiction.net, Archive of Our Own, Comic Vine. You can find my stuff out there.
Okay. And if you enjoyed this podcast, there's over 650 other episodes of the show. You can find everything we do on Podbean and pretty much, I think, wherever you get your podcast. I think the whole series of this show shows up on Spotify. Oh, no, it does show up on Spotify. I can speak to that because I scrolled all the way down and found it. So it's there. If you want to listen to all we do movies, video games, comics, TV shows, you never know. And you can search everything in Podbean to see all our content. And there's a lot. Just type in random words. You never know what's going to come up. Because I do some random shit sometimes. So definitely go check all that out. If you want to support the show, we do have a Patreon. For a little while, you can vote in our Patreon poll. We have 1 to 2 polls every month. You get to support the show and affect the show. You get to help create what happens. Because some stuff that goes in those polls, if it doesn't get voted, it never happens. So, I think that's just because there's some stuff I don't want to do. And if you don't vote for it, I ain't going to make it happen. So, it's just something to be there. So definitely go check that out. And I want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro courtesy of Elena at Hell Hasker. You can follow her on TikTok and Instagram. Definitely go check her out. And we have a Discord. Please join our Discord. Chat with us. If you want to be on the show, that's the way to do it usually. Because I post whenever I have openings on there. So you can join us and it's very first come, first serve. And you can chat with us. You can lurk. You can suggest a new episode. You can just join, please. Makes me happy. Watch that number tick up. So definitely go do that if you enjoyed the show. And please, give a shout out to Bill Tucker at Gamer Looks at 40. Definitely go check out his podcast too. He's talking he's talking Final Fantasy the rest of this year. Zelda was last year. And if you want, and please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, audio only. Review us wherever you get your podcast. I think that's everything I need to say. So we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great one.